We sold your little paintings for $200, my brother shrugged, beer in hand, feet propped up on my grandmother's antique coffee table like he'd accomplished something worth celebrating. Cleared out your junk, Mom added from the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on a towel with the casual indifference of someone who, just thrown away expired leftovers rather than 15 years of my life's work. My heart stopped, my vision tunneled, and somewhere in the devastating silence, my phone began to ring, the caller ID displaying a Manhattan area code and a name that would change everything, Christie's auction house. But let me take you back to how my family came to destroy something they never understood. I was born with paint in my blood. That's what my grandmother used to say, watching me sketch on napkins at Sunday dinners while my brother Marcus played football in the backyard with the other normal kids. Grandma Elise had been a painter herself, never famous, never wealthy, but talented in ways that made me believe magic was real and lived in brushstrokes. She died when I was 12, leaving me her art supplies and a small inheritance my parents immediately absorbed into the family finances. For your future, they promised. I never saw a penny of it. Growing up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, meant growing up in a family that valued practical things. My father, before he left, worked at the John Deere plant. My mother managed a dental office. My brother Marcus was the golden child, quarterback, homecoming king, business degree from Iowa State. Everything about him was solid, dependable, Midwestern. And then there was me. Celeste Hartman. The dreamer. The difficult one. The daughter who spent her allowance on oil paints instead of clothes. The teenager who skipped prom to finish a canvas. The young woman who chose the School of the Art Institute of Chicago over the sensible, state school my mother had budgeted for. Art school? Mom had laughed when I showed her the acceptance letter. And what exactly do you plan to do with that? Paint houses? I'll be a fine artist. My professors say I have rare talent. Talent doesn't pay rent, Celeste. Talent doesn't buy groceries. When are you going to grow up and join the real world? I went anyway, funding my education through scholarships, part-time jobs, and student loans that would take 2 decades to pay off. I graduated with honors, moved to New York City with $400 and a suitcase full of canvases, and began the impossible task of building a life from pigment and vision. New York was brutal and beautiful. I lived in a converted storage unit in Bushwick, sharing a bathroom with 6 other aspiring artists who all believed they'd be the one to break through. I worked as a waitress, a dog walker, a TaskRabbit for wealthy Manhattan families who needed someone to organize their closets. Every dollar I didn't need for survival went to supplies. And I painted. God, how I painted. My style evolved over those hungry years, large-scale abstract expressionism with elements of magical realism woven through. Impossible colors that seemed to glow from within. Figures emerging from chaos that viewers swore moved when they weren't looking directly at them. Critics would later call it luminescent surrealism. I just called it the only language I'd ever been fluent in. I had my first gallery showing at 26, a tiny space in the Lower East Side that smelled like mildew and ambition. My family didn't come. Marcus said he had work stuff. Mom said New York was too far and too expensive, though she'd traveled to Florida twice that year for vacations. Just send pictures, she said. I'm sure it's very nice. I stopped sending pictures after that. The breakthrough happened slowly, then all at once. A collector named Margaret Chinakonkwo discovered my work at a group show in Chelsea when I was 31. She was the kind of woman who wore caftans that cost more than my rent and collected art the way others collected stamps, obsessively, joyfully, with an eye for genius before the world caught up. You, she said, standing in front of my largest piece, are going to be important. She bought 7 paintings that night. More importantly, she introduced me to her network, curators, critics, other collectors who trusted her judgment implicitly. Within a year, I had gallery representation. Within 2, I had a waiting list. I never told my family about any of it. They never asked. During those years, I rented a storage unit in Long Island City to house my growing archive. Canvases too large for my apartment. Early works I couldn't bear to sell. Experimental pieces that didn't fit the market but meant everything to me personally. My entire artistic evolution, documented in paint and canvas. I visited home twice a year, Christmas and Mom's birthday, bringing gifts they accepted without enthusiasm and stories about life in the big city that I edited heavily for consumption. They thought I was still waitressing, still struggling, still proving them right about the foolishness of artistic dreams. I didn't correct them. Pride, maybe. Or protection. Some part of me needed them to see my success on my own terms, when I was ready, not filtered through their skepticism. That decision would cost me almost everything. The call came on a random Tuesday in March. Mom's voice was strange, thick, labored. She'd had a minor heart attack. Nothing life-threatening, the doctors said, but she needed bypass surgery and months of recovery. Marcus was too busy with his new construction business to manage her care. Someone needed to come home. I was on a flight to Cedar Rapids within 6 hours. What I found when I arrived was worse than I'd expected. Mom's house, the house I'd grown up in, had fallen into disrepair. Peeling paint, overgrown lawn, rooms cluttered with decades of accumulation. Marcus had borrowed money from her for his business and never paid it back. The medical bills were piling up. Insurance covered some things but not everything. I need to sell the house eventually, Mom admitted from her hospital bed. Start fresh somewhere smaller. But there's so much stuff to go through. I can't even think about it. I'll help, I said. I'll take care of everything. You have your waitressing job. It's fine. I'll handle it. I moved into my childhood bedroom, arranged remote work with my gallery, and began the excavation of a lifetime's worth of objects. It was during this process that I made a decision I would deeply regret. The storage unit in Long Island City cost $800 a month. Not a fortune by New York standards, but money I was now spending on Mom's groceries, medication, and utility bills. I called the facility and arranged to have the contents shipped to Iowa, to be stored temporarily in Mom's basement until I could return to the city. 14 crates, the shipping manifest read. Contents, artwork, canvases, personal effects. I told my mother the crates were old furniture I'd been meaning to sort through. I didn't explain what was actually inside. I didn't think I needed to. They would sit in the basement, untouched, until I was ready to deal with them. Mom's recovery took longer than expected. 4 months became 6. 6 became 8. I flew back to New York periodically for gallery obligations but spent most of my time in Cedar Rapids. Managing doctor's appointments and physical therapy sessions and the slow rehabilitation of a woman who had never quite believed in me. Somewhere during those 8 months, something shifted. Mom softened. We had conversations we'd never had before, about Grandma Elise, about her own abandoned dreams of being a singer, about the fear that had made her push me towards safety rather than passion. I was wrong, she said one evening, tears in her eyes. About your art. About New York. About all of it. I was just so scared you'd end up struggling like I did. I did struggle, Mom. I still do sometimes. But I also built something real. I know. I wish I'd seen it sooner. It felt like healing. It felt like a door opening after decades of being closed. I should have told her about the paintings then. But the moment felt too fragile, too new. I decided to wait until she was fully recovered, until I could show her properly, bring her to New York, let her see with her own eyes what her daughter had become. I never got the chance. The disaster happened during my last trip back to the city. A major collector had requested a studio visit, the kind of opportunity that could define the next phase of my career. I flew to New York for 3 days, leaving Mom in Marcus's questionable care with detailed instructions about medications, meals, and rest. When I returned, the basement was empty. I noticed immediately. The crates had been stacked near the water heater, visible from the stairs. Now there was nothing but concrete and dust. Mom? My voice echoed through the house. Where are the crates that were in the basement? She emerged from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. Oh, Marcus took care of those. He's been helping clean out the house while you were gone. Getting it ready to sell. My blood ran cold. Took care of them how? Sold them, I think. Or donated. I don't know the details. She smiled, oblivious. He said it was mostly junk anyway. Old furniture, broken frames. He got $200 for the lot. $200? $200? I know, not much. But it's something, right? And now we have space for, Mom. My voice cracked. Those weren't furniture. Those were my paintings. 15 years of my paintings. My entire archive. Her face went pale. What? Marcus chose that moment to walk through the front door, beer in hand, grinning like he'd won something. Celeste. How was New York? We got a lot done while you were gone. The basement, the garage, we sold your little paintings for $200, I repeated, my voice hollow. He shrugged, settling onto the couch, feet propped up on Grandma's antique coffee table. Cleared out your junk. Some guy with a van was buying estate stuff. Gave us $200 for everything. Not bad for finger paintings, right? Cleared out your junk, Mom repeated weakly, realization dawning. Finger paintings? I couldn't breathe. Those were 15 years of work. Gallery pieces. Commission studies. Work worth. My phone rang. The sound cut through my panic like a scalpel. Manhattan area code. A name on the screen that made no sense in this context, Christie's. I answered on instinct, my hands shaking. Ms. Hartman? This is Jonathan Webb from Christie's auction house in New York. I apologize for the unexpected call, but I'm reaching out on behalf of a client regarding your collection. Specifically, the early period works we've been attempting to locate for 18 months. What? A significant buyer, I'm not at liberty to disclose their identity, has been acquiring your pieces through secondary markets. They've assembled what they believe is the most comprehensive collection of your formative works outside your personal archive. However, they recently learned that additional pieces may exist and have authorized me to make an offer. I sat down heavily on the nearest chair. An offer? For the complete archive of your early and experimental works. Unsigned studies, personal pieces, anything from before your gallery representation began. Our buyer is offering $4.7 million for the collection, pending authentication, $4.7 million. The room spun. My brother's voice seemed to come from very far away. Who's that? Telemarketer? Ms. Hartman? Are you still there? The collection, I heard myself say. It's gone. My family sold it. 2 days ago. For $200. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? My brother sold my archive to an estate buyer. $200. It's gone. More silence. Then, carefully, Ms. Hartman, do you have any information about this buyer? A name, a business card, anything? Because if those works enter the unregulated market, authentication becomes nearly impossible, and the value, I don't know anything. I wasn't here. I was in New York. Jonathan Webb exhaled slowly. I see. I'm very sorry, Ms. Hartman. If you're able to locate any information, please contact me immediately. Our buyer is highly motivated. We may be able to track the works through dealer networks. He gave me his direct line. I wrote it on my hand because I couldn't find paper. When I hung up, my mother was crying and my brother was finally starting to understand. Wait, Marcus said, his beer forgotten. $4.7 million? For your paintings? I couldn't look at him. For my life's work. Which you sold for $200 because you thought it was junk. How was I supposed to know? You never told us anything. You let us think you were a waitress. So you sold everything without asking? The scream tore out of me, 15 years of frustration and dismissal and family dysfunction compressed into a single moment. Mom flinched. Marcus stepped back. I didn't know, he repeated weakly. Celeste, I swear, I didn't know. You didn't ask. That's the problem with this family, you never ask. You just assume I'm the failure, the dreamer, the one who needs to be managed. It never occurred to you that I might have built something real while you weren't paying attention. I grabbed my coat and walked out. The next 48 hours were a blur of desperate phone calls. I contacted every estate buyer, antique dealer, and junk shop within 50 miles of Cedar Rapids. I posted on every art recovery forum I could find. I called Christie's back and gave them every scrap of information I had. On the third day, a miracle. A woman named Patricia Holden called me. She ran an antique shop in Des Moines, specializing in estate finds. She bought a lot of paintings from a weird guy with a van matching my description. Most of them were landscapes and amateur still lives she planned to sell for $20 each. But 14 large canvases had caught her attention. Abstract pieces with unusual luminescence. She'd set them aside, intending to research the artist. The signature on the back says C. Hartman, she said. That's you? I drove 90 miles in just over an hour. Patricia Holden's shop was a cluttered wonderland of other people's discarded lives. And there, leaning against the back wall of her storeroom, were 12 of my paintings. Not 14, 2 had already been sold to a decorator in Minneapolis, but 12. Including some of my most important early works. I sank to my knees in front of them, touching canvases I'd created in that tiny Bushwick apartment when I didn't know if I'd eat dinner that night. Paintings that held my evolution, my struggle, my becoming. These are really something, Patricia said, watching me. I could tell they weren't amateur work. The technique, the color composition, whoever made these knew what they were doing. I made them. They're mine. And someone sold them for $200 with a bunch of estate junk? My brother. He thought they were worthless. Patricia shook her head slowly. Families. I see it all the time in this business. People throwing away treasures because they don't understand what they're looking at. How much do you want for them? She studied me for a long moment. What did you say your name was again? Celeste Hartman? Yes. She pulled out her phone, typed something, and her eyes widened. You're the Celeste Hartman? The luminescent surrealist? I just read an article about you in Art Forum. That's me. Patricia laughed, not cruelly, but with genuine amazement. Your brother sold these for $200? These paintings that Christie's is looking for? Yes. She looked at the paintings, then at me, then at her phone again. Something shifted in her expression. I paid $200 for the whole lot. Most of it was genuine junk. I'll make my money back selling bad landscapes to tourists. These 12 paintings? She shook her head. Take them. No charge. I can't do that. They're worth. I know what they're worth. But I also know what it feels like to have family dismiss something you poured your soul into. My father burned my poetry journals when I was 16. Called them silly girl nonsense. That kind of wound doesn't heal easily. She helped me load the canvases into my rental car. The two I already sold, the decorator's name is Ingrid something. I have her card somewhere. She'd probably sell them back if you explain the situation. Thank you. I don't know how to repay. Become famous enough that I can tell this story at parties. That's payment enough. I recovered 11 of the 12 paintings. The 12th, one of my personal favorites, a piece called Emergence that depicted a woman rising from a sea of color, had been resold twice and was now in the hands of a collector in Portland who had no intention of giving it up. He'd paid $500 for it. He wanted $50,000 to sell it back. Christie's handled the negotiation. Their buyer, whose identity I eventually learned was a tech billionaire with a passion for supporting female artists, purchased Emergence for $180,000 and promptly donated it back to me. The remaining collection sold at auction for $5.2 million, more than the original offer, driven up by the dramatic story of loss and recovery that the art press couldn't resist covering. Family sells masterworks for $200. The Celeste Hartman story became the headline that launched my career into an entirely new stratosphere. I used part of the money to pay off my mother's medical bills and establish a trust for her care. She protested at first. I don't deserve it. After everything we said, everything we assumed, you're my mother. Deserve doesn't enter into it. I used another portion to establish the Elise Hartman Foundation, providing grants to young artists from working-class backgrounds. Grandma would have liked that. Marcus and I didn't speak for 2 years. When we finally did, at our mother's 70th birthday party, he approached me with the hesitant posture of a man who'd spent a long time thinking. I was wrong, he said simply. Not just about selling the paintings. About everything. I spent my whole life thinking you were the failure because you didn't want what I wanted. Turns out I was the one who couldn't see what was right in front of me. It's a family tradition, I said. We're all blind to each other in different ways. Can you forgive me? I thought about the paintings I'd lost forever, pieces destroyed or scattered beyond recovery. I thought about the years of dismissal, the Christmas dinners full of subtle mockery, the constant message that my dreams were foolish. Then I thought about Patricia Holden, returning my work out of pure empathy. About the anonymous billionaire who bought Emergence just to give it back. About my mother, finally softening after decades of fear. I can try, I said. That's the best I can offer. He nodded, accepting this. My latest exhibition opened at the Museum of Modern Art last spring. The centerpiece was Emergence, the painting that nearly slipped away forever, displayed alongside a placard telling its story. Mom sat in the front row at the opening, crying quietly into tissues I'd learned to always have ready. Marcus stood in the back, looking at my work with an expression I'd never seen from him before, genuine respect. After the speeches and the champagne and the critics' praise, I stood alone in front of Emergence. The woman rising from color, reaching toward light, becoming herself against all odds. I thought about the storage unit in Iowa, the crates of junk, the $200 that almost erased 15 years of becoming. Some things can't be measured in money. But sometimes money measures what the world finally sees in you, the worth that was always there, waiting for others to recognize what you knew all along. I am an artist. I always was. And no amount of disbelief could ever change that.